The notice was taped to his bright blue front door before sunrise. By noon, the entire neighborhood was whispering. What looked like a simple color choice was about to expose a power struggle no one saw coming. Ethan Cole had painted his front door a deep coastal blue the weekend he finally finished restoring his late father's home. The shade reminded him of childhood summers and the calm his father always carried. It felt right, peaceful, personal. But 3 days later, a white envelope stamped with bold red lettering appeared on the door itself, a violation notice from the Homeowners Association. The letter stated the color was non-compliant with approved exterior standards. He had 14 days to repaint it or face escalating fines. Ethan reread the notice twice, convinced it had to be a clerical error. Other homes on the street displayed variations of green, gray, even dark red. None matched exactly. That afternoon, neighbors slowed their walks, glancing toward the door, then toward the large brick home at the corner where HOA President Linda Harrow lived. By evening, a second notice appeared. This one included a penalty schedule, the first fine, $5,000, and suddenly, the blue door felt less like paint and more like a target. The fine felt impossible, but the silence from the HOA felt worse. What Ethan didn't know was that the blue door had already become personal. Ethan visited the HOA office the next morning, carrying printed photos of nearby homes and the association's own design guidelines. The waiting room smelled faintly of lemon polish and old paperwork. When Linda Harrow entered, dressed in a crisp blazer and a smile that never reached her eyes, the temperature in the room seemed to drop. She didn't sit. "The door violates aesthetic harmony," she said, as if reading from a script. Ethan calmly pointed to the guidelines. No color list. No prohibition. No enforcement precedent. Linda's expression tightened. Uniformity preserves property values. He left believing the matter would resolve once facts were reviewed. Instead, an email arrived that evening confirming the fine and warning of additional penalties if the violation remained. Outside, a neighbor avoided eye contact, another gave a sympathetic shrug. That night, Ethan noticed something unsettling. Every porch light along the street glowed warmly except his, and from the corner house, Linda's blinds shifted. He began to realize this was not about paint, it was about control. The second letter arrived by certified mail. The amount had doubled overnight, but the real shock came from the handwritten note scrawled at the bottom. Compliance avoids further action. No signature. No explanation. Just pressure. Ethan sat at his kitchen table, the blue door visible through the hallway like a defiant horizon. He remembered his father teaching him that a home was the one place where a person should never feel small. Yet now, stepping onto his own porch felt like entering a courtroom. He began documenting everything: dates, notices, emails, photographs. He reviewed meeting minutes posted online and found something strange: exterior color enforcement had never been discussed. At dusk, Mrs. Alvarez from across the street quietly approached. "They tried this before," she whispered. "Most people just give in." "Why me?" he asked. She glanced toward the corner house. "You asked questions at the last meeting." That night, Ethan installed a small camera above the porch light, not out of fear, but clarity. If this escalated, facts would matter. Hours later, motion alerts lit up his phone, a shadow stood at his door, and slowly, deliberately, another notice was taped to the blue paint. The footage changed everything, and it revealed a truth no one in the neighborhood expected to see. At 2:14 a.m., the camera recorded Linda Harrow approaching the porch, alone, carrying a clipboard and envelope. She paused, glanced behind her, then taped the notice beside the previous ones. No witnesses. No official process. Just quiet enforcement in the dark. Ethan watched the clip 3 times. HOA rules required violation notices to be mailed and logged, not hand-delivered privately. By morning, the video had already reshaped his resolve. He emailed the board requesting a formal hearing and attached still images from the footage. The reply arrived within minutes, unusually brief: a meeting would be scheduled. Word spread quickly, neighbors lingered longer at mailboxes. Conversations hushed when Ethan approached, then resumed with curiosity rather than avoidance. For the first time, he noticed something else: several homes had subtle variations that technically violated the same vague harmony standard, yet only one door carried fines, the blue one. That afternoon, a fourth notice appeared, but this time it wasn't taped, it was slid under the mat, and Ethan knew the meeting would not be simple. The hearing room filled beyond capacity. What was supposed to be routine enforcement now felt like a public reckoning. Residents packed folding chairs along the walls. Some came out of curiosity, others out of quiet solidarity. Linda sat at the front beside 2 board members, her posture rigid, voice measured, prepared. Ethan spoke calmly. He presented the guidelines, the lack of color restrictions, the selective enforcement history, and finally, the video. A ripple moved through the room as the footage played. Linda's expression didn't change, but the board members shifted in their seats. She argued that uniform aesthetics required decisive leadership. She warned that inconsistency would erode property values. Her tone suggested she was protecting the community from decline. Then Mrs. Alvarez stood, then another neighbor, then another. Stories surfaced, warnings given privately, rules applied unevenly, concerns dismissed. The room no longer felt controlled, it felt awakened. The board called a recess. Outside, residents gathered in small clusters, voices low but energized. Ethan remained seated, staring at the still image frozen on the screen, his blue door, illuminated by porch light, a symbol of something larger than color. When the board returned, their decision would shape more than paint, it would define power. The decision was not immediate, but the pause revealed who truly held authority. The board reconvened with careful language and restrained expressions. The chairperson cleared his throat and stated that enforcement procedures had not followed established policy. The fine was suspended pending review. A murmur moved through the room like wind through leaves. Linda objected, citing discretion granted to leadership. But the chairperson requested documentation authorizing such discretion. None existed. The board voted to initiate a full policy audit and suspend aesthetic enforcement actions until standards were clarified and applied uniformly. For the first time, Linda looked uncertain. Outside, sunlight spilled across the sidewalk as residents exited together, no longer avoiding eye contact. Some offered Ethan quiet nods. Others thanked him without stopping. The blue door, once a focal point of tension, now stood unchanged in the warm afternoon light. That evening, Ethan received an official letter, fines withdrawn, violation dismissed, yet one final line stood out, further governance review pending. And across the street, blinds that once shifted in secrecy remained still. The blue door never changed, but the neighborhood did. Weeks later, the HOA published revised guidelines written in clear language, approved by resident vote, and accompanied by transparency rules for enforcement. Notices would require documentation, board review, and daylight delivery. Appeals would be heard publicly. Linda Harrow resigned the following month. No announcement. No explanation, just a brief note thanking the community for the opportunity to serve. Spring arrived, and with it came fresh paint, new gardens, and neighbors lingering longer in conversation. Variations of color appeared across the street, subtle blues, muted greens, soft charcoal tones, each one reflecting the people who lived behind the doors. One evening, Mrs. Alvarez paused at Ethan's walkway. It was never about the color, she said. He looked at the blue door glowing in sunset light and felt something steady return, the quiet certainty his father once carried. A home should not make a person feel small, it should remind them they belong, and that was the final twist in this unbelievable HOA story. If you love the drama, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment sharing your thoughts. It really helps this channel grow.